Alabama 1, Notre Dame 2, Clemson 3, and the Ohio State Buckeyes come in at number 4 in the College Football Playoff Committee's first College Football Playoff ranking revealed last night. Of course, only 5 this season. Well, there's a lot of happy fans in the state of Ohio and some not so happy fans in the state of Ohio. If you're a Bearcat fan, you're pretty happy right now. The Cincinnati Bearcats coming in at number 7. Buckeye fans really upset. They feel slighted. A one-loss Clemson team being put ahead of them. Ohio State still undefeated, coming off of a win over a top 10, at least at the time, opponent in the Indiana Hoosiers. I'm excited to bring on our next guest. We have ESPN college football reporter, ESPN's Adam Rittenberg, joining us now. Adam, welcome in, sir. How are you? Adam, you there? Oh, there we are.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I hit the wrong button, my friend. You know, it's like my mind's on turkey right now. I'm not 100% here.
Right.
So.
No, good to be with you.
But before we get, to enjoying Thanksgiving turkey and everything, let's talk about these college football playoff rankings that came out. You're hearing it all. We just deal with one fan base here, technically two, but you're dealing with them all, I'm sure. What is the number one complaint you're hearing from last night's playoff reveal?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. The fact that, you had 4 SEC teams in the top 9, including a 2-loss Georgia team that was beaten significantly by both Alabama and Florida. I think the BYU fans are really upset that they're number 14 despite a 9-0 record. I mean, they had their schedule completely blown up because of the COVID situation. They had 6 Power 5 opponents going into the year, and were able to play none of them because of the way the scheduling was. And so they, tried to move things around, but and they played very well. But they're sitting there at number 14. I know you mentioned Ohio State. I mean, the difference there is that the Buckeyes have played half the number of games as Clemson. They haven't lost, but I think the committee overall was rewarding more games played in some cases versus the actual performance in those games.
Now, I think it is fair to bring up Ohio State's performance against Indiana in regards to, Justin Fields. I think the timing couldn't have been worse for them to show their flaws the way that they did. They still get a top 10 win. That's all you can ask for. Justin Fields throws 3 interceptions. The secondary just kind of gets picked apart and makes a lot of mental mistakes against Penix Jr. in Indiana. How much of a role does those types of internal game mistakes impact the committee's view of a team?
Well, I think that they're looking at, certainly the entire profile, but I think, the fact is that they had a big lead in that game and they were sweating it out at the end because of the struggles in the secondary. And if the committee looked at it this way, Clemson has played twice as many games. They've both played a top 12 opponent. Ohio State beat that opponent by a touchdown after a big lead, whereas Clemson definitively beat Miami with its starting quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, and the only game that it lost was without Trevor Lawrence, even though DJ Uiagalelei played terrific against Notre Dame, a record passing total against the Irish, even in a losing effort. And so I think that's probably what they leaned on, and the fact that, Ohio State not getting a lot of credit. There are other games played, Nebraska struggling, Penn State struggling, and Rutgers struggling. And you look at the next 3 opponents, Illinois, Michigan State, Michigan, not going to help them much either. So they're probably going to need some movement in the top 3 to get into the top 3. We know obviously Notre Dame and Clemson are likely headed towards the rematch in the ACC title game.
How about out of the Big Ten? You got Northwestern coming in at number 8. It looks weird, but good for them. They've earned it, obviously. And what's nice is they have a clear path to the Big Ten title game, which could set up a top 10 showdown between themselves and the Buckeyes, which would in essence be a playoff game, I'd assume. Anyone that loses that game, you're definitely out. That's not a guarantee that if Northwestern wins, they're in. But is it setting it up to be that? If Northwestern can beat Ohio State in the Big Ten title game, both undefeated, both top 10, is that in essence a playoff game right there between Northwestern and Ohio State when that time comes?
Yes, I think it would be. I think that the fact is very few of these teams have signature wins to this point, and that's going to change here because of the championship game. The best win on the board so far is Notre Dame over Clemson. You're seeing that's why Notre Dame's 2, Clemson at 3. The second best win on the board is Florida over A&M, and that's why Florida's 5 and A&M is 6. Now, the advantage that both Northwestern and Ohio State have is a championship game. A&M is not guaranteed that because Alabama has the tiebreaker over them in the West Division. And so I do believe the fact is Clemson already has a loss, And if Notre Dame were to lose either this week to North Carolina or to Clemson in the ACC title game, they would have a loss. And we're talking about a Big Ten champion with no losses. I don't see how that team is left out. Ohio State would have wins over, then probably a top 5 or top 6 Northwestern team. And Indiana, Northwestern would have wins over Ohio State as well as Wisconsin. And, they already have a win over Iowa, which is the top 25 team there at number 24 in the CFP ranking. So I can't imagine the Big Ten would be left out this year with an undefeated champion.
ESPN's Adam Rittenberg with us here again, reacting to last night's first college football playoff rankings reveal. Alabama 1, Notre Dame 2, Clemson 3, Ohio State 4. Now you have Texas A&M and Florida out of the SEC hovering there at 5 and 6. That'll sort itself out. But the team that everyone's really interested in around here on top of Ohio State is, of course, Cincinnati. Let's be clear. I mean, I think they were surprised at how well received they were in those rankings. But what's the likelihood? I mean, how much help are they going to need to get in, assuming that they do their part and win out?
Yeah, well, they're going to need people to start losing. They would like to see a one-loss Big Ten champion. They would like to see two, maybe one-loss teams meet in the ACC championship game to take away any possibility of 2 teams coming out of the ACC. I think they would want to see Alabama run the table because that could knock out Florida in the SEC title game, and they already have that definitive win over Texas A&M. So I think it would be really interesting to see if Cincinnati and maybe Texas A&M are fighting for that last spot. Cincinnati can say, hey, we didn't lose a game. We won our conference. We beat almost everybody on our schedule by a wide margin. I think that would be a really interesting possibility here for the playoff. But what they don't want is, for Florida to beat an undefeated Alabama in the SEC title game, because Alabama, I think, would get in. We've just seen too much evidence of that over the course of the CFP, that Alabama is the one team that has real margin for error and can still survive a loss. So they don't want to see that happen. They don't want to see maybe a narrow win by Clemson over Notre Dame. So the committee has to think about putting Notre Dame in over Cincinnati. So again, all these things have to sort of fall their way, but it's still possible. They're sitting right there at 7. Unfortunately, they're not going to be playing this weekend or next week. And I was really hoping maybe Cincinnati and BYU could schedule a game for next week to enhance both of their resumes, at least the team that won it. But Cincinnati does get Tulsa in the regular season finale. That's a ranked Tulsa team right now, and they would presumably get a boost in the AAC title game as well. I think the committee does respect whoever they would face in that contest.
All right, Adam, last thing before we let you go. Big news today. Nick Saban testing positive for the coronavirus, of course, and with them being the number 1 team in the country, their matchup, the Iron Bowl between Alabama, Auburn, he will not be on the sidelines. People are questioning what makes this positive test different than the last one in regards to his presence on the sideline and what we could potentially see.
Right. So to be clear, he had a false positive last time, which happens quite a lot. I mean, for those of us who get tested, it's always a possibility that you get a false positive, and he essentially tested out of that by having 3 consecutive negative PCR tests with no symptoms. The difference this time is he does have mild symptoms. So the Alabama team doctor, their team trainer, have determined that there's really no need for follow-up testing, that he unfortunately does have the virus, and you're certainly wishing Coach Saban well. He says he has mild symptoms, nothing that's alarming at this point, but given his age, it's something to monitor going forward. And Steve Sarkisian will be the head coach this weekend against Auburn. Nick Saban will remain very involved from afar, just like he did in the lead up to the Georgia game. And they have a very, very capable staff at Alabama, a number of former head coaches on that staff, Kyle Flood, Butch Jones, and go down the list. So it's a pretty good staff to handle the Auburn game, even though they certainly would rather have Nick Saban on the sideline.
All right, Adam, go away. It's time for turkey. It's time for Thanksgiving. I appreciate your time. ESPN's Adam Rittenberg taking time to talk college football playoff rankings reaction. Adam, thank you. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Stay healthy.
Yeah, you too. Have a great holiday. Thank you.
All right, good stuff there from ESPN's Adam Rittenberg. Appreciate him taking time and hanging out with us today. And yes, I mean, this is going to be the big thing. And I'm looking at some of the games this weekend. It's not a sexy slate of games for this Saturday's tilt. I mean, you look at, number 13, Iowa State, and number 17, Texas. Oh, great. Top 25 showdown. Big whoop in my eyes, mainly because I'm like, well, that doesn't really have any implication on the college football playoff. Number 24, Iowa against Nebraska. Don't care. This game interests me right here. Notre Dame Dame and North Carolina. North Carolina ranked number 19 in the college football playoff rankings, of course, and they're going up against welcoming in Notre Dame. Notre Dame on the road at North Carolina. Notre Dame is only a 5-point favorite. All right, only a 5-point favorite. Mac Brown has done a fantastic job taking over at North Carolina. They're 6-2. I think there was a little bit more expectations for North Carolina. I really do. Coming in, a lot of talk was about how they were going to be a force in the ACC. They may not be a force in the ACC this season in regards to representing them in the ACC title game or potentially making the playoff, but North Carolina could be a force in regards to the big picture of the college football playoff rankings at this point. They have a huge opportunity to really shake up the top, because if they knock off Notre Dame this coming up weekend, that's going to move Clemson up, that's going to move Ohio State up, and then it's going to make it really interesting there in the middle when you start taking a look at some of the teams who are hovering on the outside, like Texas A&M and, of course, Florida. Now, Florida does not have they have Kentucky this week. Florida has they are at number 6. Florida 24-point favorites at home, welcoming in Kentucky. And then, of course, you continue to go down the list. Texas A&M, they're hovering right on the outside, looking in at number 5. They are right now big North Carolina Tar Heel fans right now. Of course, they got their hands full with an LSU team that I know it's not last year's LSU team. Joe Burrow's not walking through them doors. Go Tigers! All right, go Tigers! They ain't walking through that door. But LSU, still going to be a tough opponent. Texas A&M going to have to be prepared. They are only a 14.5-point favorite in that. I say only, but they are a 14.5-point favorite in that matchup. So we shall see. But again, there's not a lot of top matchups, but you're going to be keeping your eyes on a lot of certain opponents. It's unfortunate that the Cincinnati Temple game was canceled this coming up weekend. Cincinnati would have been dying to get back out on the field. Imagine a scenario for the Bearcats where you look at a team like Texas A&M who could potentially go down against LSU. What happens if you end up actually seeing Florida go down at the hands of Kentucky? I think that's more unlikely. I think you could see LSU beating Texas A&M before we see Kentucky beating Florida. But if one of those teams goes down in conference play, that's going to be huge in regards to what to expect from Cincinnati moving forward. But them not playing this weekend is a big blow to them. That's my concern for the Bearcats and Cincinnati moving forward when you look at their schedule coming up. All right. The Temple matchup is canceled. They only have one regular season game remaining, folks, and that comes on the 12th. All right. We are on December 12th. That's it. So this is a problem for Cincinnati. They don't have a game this weekend. They don't have a game next weekend. They don't have a game until December 12th. That's a problem for a Bearcat team who you just heard Adam Rittenberg say that the main reason that Ohio State also is sitting at number 4 is because Clemson has played twice the amount of games that they have. That's the other reason that you have undefeated Pac-12 teams not in the top 10. You don't have, 3-0 USC there yet. You don't have Oregon there yet, but they're going to be. And when you look at the rankings and how they shake out, whose spot do you think they're taking? If Florida and Texas A&M win out, all right, if Florida and Texas A&M win out, they're not moving from 5 or 6, okay? If Northwestern continues to win, they're not moving from 8, all right? They might move up to 7. Like, the only place Cincinnati can go from here is down, is backwards. The fact that Cincinnati, the Temple game this week is canceled is a huge deal. No game this weekend. No game the following weekend. They won't play until December 12th. That's 2 weeks from now. 3 weeks from now. All of this week, all of next week. Yeah, 3 weeks. You don't play for 2.5 weeks, basically 2.5. I'm rounding up to sound more dramatic, to really sell and emphasize the fact that they don't play games for almost a half a month. That's going to be a problem because, as I said, if Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State all win, which they're supposed to, okay, Notre Dame I still think is a little interesting in that matchup with North Carolina. If you're a Notre Dame fan, be concerned. In fact, that's my upset pick for the weekend. Notre Dame will lose to North Carolina. I'm calling it now. That's my upset pick. I couldn't make it through a whole show without some kind of drastic hot take, and that's what I'm going with. North Carolina will beat Notre Dame so that we can get the Fighting Irish out of this equation so we can start talking about the real teams that actually matter matter. Not Notre Dame. There you go. Congratulations to the Fighting Irish, though. They do have the best win of the season to this point. I am just one of those that I never buy into Notre Dame. No matter what I see from them, I just don't buy into it because every memory I have of them is every time they make it to the playoff, they get dismantled. Now, you could say the same thing about Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley. Yeah, I'll give you that. Now, they've played a few close games. Notre Dame, not so much. But again, with Cincinnati being out for the next 2.5 weeks, Northwestern wins, they can move up. Northwestern is 5-0 right now. All right, and they have Michigan State coming up this weekend. They'll be at Minnesota the following week, and then they'll have Illinois. Now, none of those opponents are truly sexy by any means. However, when you look at the setup for Northwestern, they're already number 8. You have opponents that you're going to be heavy favorites over moving forward. You're going to get to the Big Ten title game. Northwestern is going to be undefeated when it's all said and done, at least heading into the Big Ten title game. There's no way if Northwestern is undefeated in the Big Ten that Cincinnati should be ranked ahead of them. So if everything just plays out, if 1 through 4 wins out, I'm assuming Notre Dame wins out, even though I'm picking them to lose to North Carolina, but I need them to win for this example right here to show why Cincinnati's in trouble. Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State all win this weekend. Then you have Florida, then you have Texas A&M, they win. Cincinnati's at number 7. All right, they are 8-0. They don't play this week. They don't play the following week. Northwestern's going to get a win this week and a win next week. Why shouldn't they move up? They should automatically pass Cincinnati with Cincinnati not playing and Northwestern's resume continuing to get better. The fact that Northwestern will be 7-0 before Cincinnati plays their next game, you're 7-0 in the Big Ten. I don't even care if they've beat bad teams in the Big Ten. The worst Big Ten teams are probably still more of a challenge than some of the best teams that Cincinnati has played to this point. Yes, the elitist mentality is coming out, and I have no problem going there when it comes to that. So Northwestern's going to move up. What about Miami? Miami 7-1 on the season. They're sitting at number 10. You think they're not going to move up? All right. They have another top 25 opponent coming up around the corner. They have North Carolina coming up. If Miami ends up beating North Carolina, why shouldn't they move up? Cincinnati will be out of the top 10. Folks, they're not making the playoff. I tried to cue it up in that last interview. Man, what does Cincinnati need to make the playoff? But the more I'm looking at this, the more I'm reshuffling the puzzle pieces. The bottom line is there is no scenario where the Bearcats make the playoff. Now, you could say, well, if Florida goes down and Texas A&M goes down and Ohio State loses to Northwestern in the Big Ten title game. Well, okay, let's say that Florida and Texas A&M both go down. Their playoff chances are done. Let's say Ohio State loses to Northwestern in the Big Ten title game. Won't happen, but let's just pretend, okay? We're in the land of make-believe. I mean, if we're going to spend this much time talking about Cincinnati actually making the playoff, let's pretend other crazy things are happening. Let's pretend Northwestern beats Ohio State. So, okay, Ohio State's out of the equation. You know what that means? It just means that Northwestern's in the playoff and just taking Ohio State's spot. All right? Florida and Texas A&M go down. What does that do for the play? It means nothing. Alabama's still in. Clemson's still in. Let's say Notre Dame loses to North Carolina. Okay, now what? You know what's going to happen? They're going to put a one-loss Ohio State team in the playoff before they put an undefeated Bearcat team in. Folks, Cincinnati's not getting in. Enjoy the cute little Cinderella, I think I can story, but they're not making it. If Ohio State loses to Northwestern in the Big Ten title game, and I say if, and it's a huge if that happens, they will put a one-loss Ohio State team in who was undefeated until the Big Ten title game. They will put a one-loss Buckeye team in the playoff before they put an undefeated American Conference champion Cincinnati team in. Oh, there's that elitist mentality again. Yeah, damn right. All right, folks, we'll be back in a moment. Let's talk a little Dayton Flyers basketball. Sully from Talking Out Loud. He joins us next. Don't go anywhere. More of the Justin Kinner Show next.
It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Ever wonder just how far an extra mile really goes? Drive a Mercedes-Benz van and find out.